Shalom uvracha. My name is Rabbi Nati Helfgot. I'm the chair of the Department of Torah Shebaal Peh here at SAR. Hope everyone is well and healthy. The night of the Seder, we come to the middle of the Seder and we declare the uniqueness of the night, and we say, Ani velo malach, ani velo saraf, ani Hashem, bichvodi u'ba'atzmi, bichvodo ba'atzmo. God himself was the person, was the power that saved us, that redeemed us from Egypt. There was no human involvement, and there was no intermediaries, no angels, no seraphim, and even Moshe Rabbeinu is not really mentioned in the Haggadah, mentioned once on the side, but he's not really a central character in the Haggadah. And we are always brought up to recognize that on Pesach, God engaged in Geula, in that redemptive act, a pure act of divine grace, a pure act of divine chesed. But the story is not so simple, because if you look carefully at the biblical narrative, if you look carefully at Sefer Shemot, at Perek Aleph and Bet, God does not appear in Perek Aleph and Bet in chapter 1 and 2. God only enters into the narrative at the end of chapter 2, where God remembers his covenant to the Jewish people, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It's only in chapter 3 that God reveals himself to Moshe and tells him the plan of the redemption and the eventual bringing of the Jewish people to Mount Sinai and the land of Israel. And it's almost as if God waits to get involved in the story until after chapter 1 and in chapter 2. And what happens in chapter 1 and chapter 2? In chapter 1 and chapter 2, we have the story of the Jewish people being enslaved. We have human beings doing terrible things to other human beings. But at the same time, we also have great stories of courage and responsibility, of the Jewish people in the face of enslavement and oppression. They go on and have children. We have the story of the midwives who risk their life to show responsibility and care for those entrusted to them. And according to some commentaries, these midwives were not even Jewish, they were not even Israelites, they were Egyptian. They were willing to show and extend themselves for others. In chapter 2, Yocheved and Amram have a child. Again, in the face of decrees, they opt for life and for hope. And when the child is born, they take care of the child, they hide the child, and eventually they put the child in the Nile. Not exactly in the Nile, on the side of the Nile, in the Suf, to make sure that the child would be protected. They check on the child every day. The sister checks on the child every day. Vatere me'rachok. She looks from afar. Even Bat Paro doesn't simply abandon this child, but shows care and love and chesed to this child. And Moshe Rabbeinu, when he grows up, even though he grows up in the lap of luxury, in the palace, could have turned his back on his brethren, but he goes out and he sees injustice and he steps in. He shows responsibility. When an Israelite is in trouble, when two Israelites are fighting, and of course, in the final story of the shepherd girls who are attacked by the shepherd boys. And Moshe Rabbeinu steps in. In all these stories, so to speak, before God can enter and cut through the veil of history and get involved in the redemption, human beings have to step up and show Achrayut. They have to step up and show responsibility, one to the other. They have to care about one to the other and be willing to put themselves on the line. You know, this year, our theme here in school has been Achrayut, responsibility. Each student, each teacher, the learning community for each other, to mask up, to be socially distant, to care about others, to help people get vaccines, to help people when they're quarantined. All these things, Achrayut. And when we have Achrayut, the Bible in effect is saying, then God, hopefully, will step in and bring the redemption fully. Maybe even a miraculous redemption. I want to wish everybody a wonderful Pesach. A Pesach that this year we can hopefully expand a little bit at our table with grandparents and great-grandparents. A little bit more of beyond the nuclear family. And hopefully next year we can have a full chabura at our table, a full group at our table. I want to wish everybody a Chag Kasher V'Sameach and a Zisen Pesach, a sweet Pesach.